Okay. Howdy, folks. Oh, let me get this other guy in here. I'm on the wrong tab for you folks to be able to see him. My God. All right, there we go. All right. Howdy, folks. I'm Cody here with To Walk with Giants, joined by the ever incredible co-host over here to my stage right. There you go. Uh oh. Uh oh. I think you're. There you go.
My
You.
mic was muted. That's
That
on
was it.
me.
Okay, I clicked on mute. I was like, it said it can't.
All right, folks. Hi, I'm Laguna Munta, aka Christopher Messick, and yeah, we're thrilled to be here this evening for our fifth episode of To Walk with
It
Giants.
is five.
Um, Cody and I, we both live in Taos, New Mexico, sort of a rural little town, most popularly known, I guess, for its ski resort, and we have a very large bridge that crosses a gorge. We got a big hole in the ground here,
We got
and
the Pueblo as well. I think some
yes,
folks got that one. Movie Easy Rider was filmed out here. That
yeah,
was one of the
and
more
it's
more
popular.
bits. If you ever saw Terminator 4, our bridge is in that.
True. It's also in Wild Hogs, Natural
Totally.
Born Killers. It's about every movie with a bridge. It's
When
in
they
it.
when they couldn't afford the Grand Canyon, but they wanted a big old bridge, they came over here and spent like $5.
Exactly. And they
Very
got a hell of
excellent.
a tax break on that
That
$5.
would be the other bit. Yep, exactly. God, pay
Uh,
Arizona for that. But yeah, tonight we're going to talk about discipline. Yeah,
right.
that's a it's a
And
heck of a thing. I think we both have a good amount to say on that, from both
yes,
artistic and life perspectives.
for that's for sure. Well, Cody, why don't you tell them what you do and give them a little introduction?
Well, nobody wants to know who I am, but no. So
They do.
I'm Cody Fernandez. I make comics. I made a couple. I run the comic book imprint Ironverse Comics. It's best of the weird space west, as we call it. It's kind of a I like to think of it as like a cartoony, gritty thought piece. You can check it out on ironversecomics.com, all of that for free. I would love to hear your thoughts on it if you check it out. But I do that. I've been doing that for I'll say at least 10 years. It's been longer depending on what benchmark you want to say it started. But about 10 years I've been working with the artists, so I'll use that one. So I've been doing that for a while, and it's been a heck of a journey. And work with pups, play a little music here and there, paint a little bit. I try and do all the mediums just so I can figure out, what I'm doing. I like self expression.
Very nice. And yes, I am Laguna Munta. That is my musical title. I write and record original music, predominantly in the rock and roll genre. I've released two albums independently and several singles as well. And I've been playing music for actually playing guitar and singing. It's pushing 20 years if it's not already there. So that's kind of our artistic background, and that's kind of just a gist of what we've done and what we do so you can have an idea of where we're coming from when we approach these topics, such as discipline. So, Cody, do you want to throw out a quick take on discipline?
Well, you know what? I actually pulled some quotes myself this time. So I want to start off with this one from Marcus Aurelius, the legendary Stoic. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. And I think that is a wonderfully expressive way to kind of obtusely explain what discipline is. It's your ability to find what you don't really care for, but you know is the right path and apply it to your life. And discipline is the consistent effort of applying that. I think, and it's a practice. It's a routine. It's a effort. Most importantly, and it's very very important to live a happy, healthy, and meaningful, in fact, life. I believe. How about yourself? Oh, you're muted again, unless I muted you.
I'm not very disciplined when it comes to my mic control today,
That's all
evidently.
right. I wasn't very disciplined in turning on Audacity, so for me, the recording is going to start right now.
There we go. So for me, discipline is important, especially when pursuing art. And so what I see discipline as is just the idea of doing something even when they're like the Marcus Aurelius quote, essentially when there are obstacles in the way, maybe using those obstacles. It's about doing things when you don't really want to do them, but you need to do them. Sort of just being present and making things happen against the odds and against yourself. I often find that I can be my biggest adversary when it comes to accomplishing something. So I think discipline just comes down to getting things done.
I agree. There's the other kind of discipline which I was not so prepared to talk about, but when it is not self discipline, it's discipline from an authority figure, whether it's an adult or other. I don't know if I have too much to say
Ah,
on that, but that is a thing, and its goal is very similar, but it's more of it's the goal is control in both cases. It's
correction.
yeah. Right, and I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just a different form of it, and I did not apply much thought into that one because yeah, you go and read my book. I'm very anti-authoritarian. I don't spend too much time worrying about what other people are thinking of me. Um,
right. And
but
I did not
it's
approach it
important.
from that angle either.
So we'll probably be talking mostly about self-discipline because again, both of us are artists, and that is a
Right.
massive part of your craft. I have one more quote on that from Miyamoto Musashi, legendary samurai, Book of Five Rings. People might know. Um,
Yeah, I've heard you talk about him. I need to read it.
if yeah, it's a very short book. It's like 100 pages. It's totally worth your time. If there isn't discipline, how can there be a true realization of an ideal? And
There you
so
go.
how he applied it to, in his case, it was life, and there's so many layers to that when it's in the context of who he was and what he did and all of that. But because his focus was violence and making sure it is very very precise and fluid and adaptable, and hopefully did not have to be done, but he mastered it right. Um, and for that again 1,000 days of lessons for discipline, 10,000 days of lessons for mastery. That's another quote from him. And basically it is the application, in this case we'll again be talking about self-discipline, but it's the application of effort, usually uncomfortable effort, towards, as was said, an ideal or the goal that you wish to forge yourself or your craft into. And
Yeah.
you can apply that in any effort of work that has a practice to it. It doesn't have to be artistic, but it's very directly relatable to art and most crafts, quote unquote. And that's why it's arts and crafts. It's most craft can have an art to it if you approach it that way, right? Um,
And I think if you can have a discipline in one area of your life, you can certainly apply discipline to the rest.
I think so too. I think it's one practice with many applications, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So again, yeah, discipline in eating, exercise, which is mastery of body. You can have mastery of again, in your case music, in my case a bit music. I'm trying. Uh, in writing, for instance, Stephen King, prolific. He always had a
Discipline
very
is thought.
specific time period. Exact discipline of thought. That's a big one for mental
Yeah.
health in particular, and learning how to think for survival and for navigating the crazy sea of a world we find ourselves in and all the chaos and all of that. Discipline is that beautiful rock that you can stand upon, and at the very least it can help you see that ideal, and then you can apply discipline from there to hopefully reach that ideal, to build that raft and keep pushing against the current, right?
Definitely. And I wanted to talk about kind of my how I started in music and how I think a discipline applies within that.
Oh,
So I think for me when I started playing guitar, it was very much a passion and it was very much a novelty because it was this fresh new thing. and I would play for hours and hours when I would play. And while I still have passion, and there is novelty because it's an instrument. Well, I think music is an avenue for discovery, and an instrument certainly is an avenue for discovery. Especially in my case, where I haven't really studied theory, I play by ear mostly, so I'm constantly discovering uh, things that are new to me. But in the early days, it was that passion and that novelty that really motivated me. And as I continued to play and sort of um, started writing songs, and of course, getting in a band, and then that discipline of trying to work with other people, everybody show up at the same time, coordinating our efforts, that sort of thing. And then disciplining myself in the sense that I kind of had to take on a leadership role that is not easy necessarily. There's a discipline in that. But now that I'm in this kind of Laguna Munta era, this solo phase, I've had to discipline myself quite a bit to maintain, because if I play a show by myself, a lot of times people want me to play for 3 hours, and that takes a lot of rehearsal. And rehearsal can be very tedious for me. I enjoy playing, but I enjoy playing in front of a crowd or with people. So the rehearsal phase is very difficult, and it can be very frustrating. And so there becomes it becomes a real test of discipline, where I have to go into the room and rehearse an hour and a half, and then take a break, and then rehearse for another hour and a half, just so I can practice that one set in one day and try to get the most out of it that I can. So that's been a real test of discipline for me as I've kind of pursued this musical path.
For me, in a similar vein, and I totally recommend folks check out Laguna Munta on Bandcamp, would be the best place for them to find your what your discipline manifested.
Definitely, yeah. That's and you can listen to all that music for free.
All right. Well, oh, killer. On my end, it's there's most of not all of my art, but a significant amount of it, particularly the comic book work, is collaborative. So there's a lot of again, there's that leadership role as well. There's discipline in how I've been able to get that work done. Folks don't know for those little funny books. They're not cheap expressions, and so I had to find a path forward to getting those funds. I'm not somebody who just kind of has that around, and the path I found was crowdfunding. It's a wonderful avenue. I totally recommend folks check it out, but you have to be very disciplined with that as well. I had to practice and learn and force myself to do many things I didn't like, joining social media, doing things like this where I'm podcasting, meeting a bunch of different people. I don't like meeting people. Sometimes I do. I can meet some great people. I've met many great people. That's kept me doing it, right? But it's not something I'm innately drawn to do. And so I had to find these paths and then try them, and then sometimes have a bad case and still try them again. And it's been a wonderful path to growth for myself. And there's a lot of different levels, right? If you're working on a collaborative effort, you need multiple cogs to be turning, and when you're the basis of that, for one, the writer creator, to the networker, marketer, and fundraiser, you really have to, for one, as you said, you started with passion. You have to be passionate about it. It can't just be something you
Yes.
just decide to do, because that you need affection, you need appreciation, and you need gratitude for what you're working at, and every little win you can find to survive that. And I think that's a big fuel for discipline, are the little wins and being able to recognize and appreciate those. But it's also not something I've like. I'm very floaty just as a person. And so it's it's been a lot. Like, I've had to find, I call them guiding stars. I've called it a rock to stand on. I've called these different things. I have to find pillars to build upon that I truly believe in, and then the efforts forward are discipline. That's the number one push forward. It's the manifestation of those efforts towards that ideal, as was said, and when you get closer to that ideal, as long as your eyes are open and your mind's open and your heart's open, honestly, you can recognize those little things, and it will continue to fuel your discipline. It'll stop being as rough. You'll start feeling like, oh, this is the right path. And you get into routine, you get into rhythm, you get into all these different. You get tempered by discipline, and you become stronger by it, just like any fine metal. It's something, particularly when I was younger, I was terrible at, and I've continued to work hard to get better and better at it. And I have been blessed with many opportunities to fail and learn from those failures, and many lucky breaks to and effort and hard won breaks that justified those efforts.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things you said that I
Oh.
I think are worth touching on, and one of them was the well, I think it's difficult to have a discipline when things aren't going well, right? You were
Mm-hmm.
talking about when things start building up and kind of gaining a momentum, sort of. I think it's even harder when things aren't going well to maintain the discipline, because if you can get things going well, that's just a positive feedback loop you can get yourself into, and then I think that kind of no, that's great. Obviously, that's the goal, but that's I think that's easier to sustain,
Oh,
than if you're
significantly.
struggling. Um, and that I think that just comes back to a willpower, and again a passion. That
Yep.
passion, it needs to be maintained, and I don't and obviously that's not a choice. You either have it or you don't for whatever you're pursuing. But if you really want to accomplish a goal, even when things go badly, you'll keep working on it. You'll come back to it because it's just that important. And you have to pursue things regardless of what people say. And it's okay to like for example, when I was working on Chuck, it was a long process. It took me a couple years to get that album written, recorded, and just to really make it happen. And there was a lot of self-doubt along the way, but I just kept working. I kept working on it, and I just convinced myself that it was never going to be finished, but I was going to keep working on it. And there were ups and downs in that process, but I had such a drive and such a passion to want to bring that project to life that I just kept grinding. And it was nice because it the 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 project itself left me open to bringing other people in. It needed other people involved, and that's another great fuel, is if you have the right people around. They say if you want to improve your life, you've got to get yourself around the people that are trying to do the things you want to do, people who are moving in the direction that you want to be moving in, movers and shakers, people who are making things happen. And so if you can find the right group to bring into your project in even small ways, that can be a huge boon for you. And that was certainly the case with Chuck, which was a long and sort of grueling, uh, but love filled process.
Yeah, I can speak to that, at least in a hypothetical. If I had not been working with the artist in particular that I was blessed to meet out of just weirdness, on the process, and my just my the ability to open myself up to opportunity, and connect with that, and then have the discipline and the hope that this could work out, and all these different factors that led to connecting with this wonderful individual. If I had not connected with that person, and I connected with somebody else who would take you for a ride, quote unquote, or all these other things, would I have made these comics, or would I have been completely soured on the effort? I can't answer because I didn't have to. I didn't have to figure that
Right.
out, luckily. But I can very well theorize that no, particularly the other events, if they had occurred in my life, had occurred as they have, I don't know where I'd be. Particularly in artistry, and in passion, all these things like trying to figure out like I also do miniature painting, and that's a big one that could get very, very monotonous, and trying to do the same thing again and again, or utilize a specific color in a certain way and you can't get it to lay right. All these different things that you've got to apply yourself and want it, and then not be afraid to fail. That's the other bit of discipline, is a lot of the time you're when we both learned an instrument, right? So when you're learning that instrument, how many times do you fail compared to how many times do you succeed, particularly at the beginning?
Well, I guess that depends on what you mean by fail.
Right. Exactly, right? It's your perspective on it that matters.
Exactly.
But from an ear, right? We've all heard oh, you gave your 5-year-old a violin, that noise, right?
Right.
That's one bit, right? But it's them playing with a thing. It's a different perspective. But
Right.
the goal is, how many times do you not get hit? You're learning a song. How many times do you have to play it before you've actually played it correctly, right?
Like learning a new song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's kind
And
of what
even
I mean.
writing, even
Oh,
writing it. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. I have to work through songs constantly. I have to feel things out, and I screw it up. And it's kind of amazing that process. When you feel like you've mastered your own song,
Mm.
that's fascinating because here it is, this concept that you've come up with this chord progression and these notes and this melody. And when you start working on it, it's really rough. And I'm not very good at some of the songs I write when I first come up with them. But it's interesting to see that evolution too. And I guess this is a discipline also because you have to keep it's like working clay, I guess you could say, writing a song because you start with this rough shape and you sort of figure out where you want it to go. Oh, this chord sounds better. Okay, I could do this lick there. Okay, this lyric doesn't really convey the thought. Okay, oh, I'm mixing metaphors here. Let's change that. This sort of thing. And as I write it, I practice it and I play it, and then I start getting good at it. Then I start feeling the proper place for the vocals to go, the proper moves for my voice to make. And I wouldn't call it anything, I wouldn't call it a failure, but there are certainly moments where it's not where you want it to be. Speed humps, ruts, whatever you want to call it. But I feel like as long as you're pursuing your passion, you're not failing. I think failing is giving up on your passion.
Well, there you go. Um, I guess I was thinking mainly you're failing to play the song.
I
If
know what you mean. I know
Yeah,
what you mean.
yeah, that would be the context. But if you have any more to say, I've got like 3 critters I need to find a way to wrangle because they're
Yeah.
getting kind of wild. So I will be right back, folks. It should only take a minute, but I leave you in the hands of a very capable, wonderful individual.
Okay. So now what this show is really about. I've been waiting for this opportunity, folks. Let's get into it. No, I'm just kidding. Um, One of the things I'd like to talk about that I feel like is important for discipline. He didn't mute his mic. It's okay. Um, is that when you come up against these obstacles, like Cody had quoted this Marcus Aurelius quote, and I can't quote it verbatim, but it was essentially using these obstacles as a tool. And I feel very strongly about that because when you're creating a piece of art, there's going to be a lot of things that get in your way, whether it be simple day to day things like if you're recording and the power goes out or you break a string, and then there's going to be other things like your job or your family life or your health or you're stressed out about this or that and you can't focus on what you want to be doing. And I see those more now than when I did when I was younger as tests from the universe and sort of opportunities. I feel like it's the universe saying, "Hey, we've heard you vocalize this desire. Here's an obstacle for you to overcome because, well, kind of want to see if you really want this or not. Do you have what it takes? Can you pass this obstacle to keep pursuing this?" And sometimes those obstacles are going to be really frustrating and they're going to make you angry and Sometimes you're going to be that obstacle because you're being lazy, or you'd rather go watch a movie, or you're just not interested anymore. But I'm telling you, those times where those obstacles have come up and surpassing them through your discipline and your passion, those have been very rewarding.
Oh, I totally agree. I think I have a quote that connects to that. Now, I didn't hear all of it, and I had to figure out what to do with these wild beasts. But Marcus Aurelius is the last quote I got. But we should discipline ourselves in small things, and from these progress to things of greater value. Um, Again, using discipline as a stepladder from learning that song to actually learning how to play a myriad of songs, to playing in a band, to performing in front of people. All of these things start from very small steps. You just hit a couple notes is kind of the very basis of it, right? um,
Well, that's yeah, and I think there's something we can touch on that's deeper even,
oh,
because I think I certainly admire and respect people when I this is not the only basis for respect, but I certainly have a great respect for people who have seemed to have mastered a craft, or do you know what I mean, or an art form, or an instrument, that sort of thing, because it tells you a lot about that person. The fact that they spent the time, effort to make that happen, it tells you that they're a person who can be consistent, and who can have follow through,
well, and
and who can
that
pursue
can
something.
value their passion to a point of actually suffering for it, quote unquote, right?
Yeah,
And that's a big one. Being willing to put yourself. I can use that again. The tempering tempering metal in a fire, right? It's
right.
that bit. It's not. You're not done one dip in the fire. It's gonna be a few, and you're gonna get hammered on, and it's not a sword for quite a bit of effort, right? And not only is the blacksmith applying that, but if you're thinking of the metal itself, it's knowing what you desire. Bring that back. We had a show on desire if you folks are interested. Uh, but it's knowing what you desire, applying your passion to it so that you have a basis, and then using that passion to fuel discipline and to understand what steps need to be taken that might not necessarily be pleasant in the moment. And some can be very pleasant, and that's still a form of discipline. You could love doing something and not do it for whatever reason, laziness or other things taking priority. And it takes discipline to set your priorities straight and understand what you want to do, when and why and how. And it's all effort.
Can you read that last quote again?
Sure. I think it was this one. We should discipline ourselves in small things, and from
Yes.
these progress to things of greater value.
Okay, so I would consider being disciplined in music a small thing,
Mm.
because being disciplined in emotion,
There you
and
go.
in thought, and in conduct are greater than that. And I think that's why it's so important to get people, children, get the youth into these sorts of pursuits, because if they can have those small disciplines, they might be able to discipline themselves more and conduct themselves more effectively. I believe through my pursuits in music, I think that they've made me a better person in a lot of ways. I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't play music. So I think that music could be one of these little disciplines, and writing, painting, all these can be
Yes.
these little disciplines that can lead to greater disciplines, and on the kind of human relationship scale, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Emotional and self knowledge is a big one that we've explored multiple times on this, because most of these giants that we've walked with are very much key in not ignoring yourself and what you are and what you want to be, right? Again, knowing what you want to do. Discipline is a mechanism in which you can reach those higher ideals, reach for that, super ego, whatever you want to call it, and try and manifest a better you. And I found that through all of my artistic passions. And sometimes it's a very little one. It's just like, I'm feeling cruddy this day, but here, I'm going to sit and paint for a few hours, and I
Yeah.
lose that person that was feeling cruddy and all that. It's lost in that flow of applying color to an object. Uh, and even in that small period of time and that small effort, I did indeed reforge myself for a brief period of time. Now, when I'm done and all that, I still have the memory of how I felt, and whatever caused that thing might still need to be dealt with, all these different things. But I was able to, for a time, allow myself to breathe and all of these things. And I think, as you said, particularly for younger individuals, having those outlets is crucial for that, because often they're at a stage where they don't know what to do with themselves, so they're stuck with the raw emotion, and they're stuck with the raw, lack of experience as well. And so having anywhere to channel that is constructive, whether it is something more physical, you go and work out or what have you, or it's an art form, or it's a craft, or whatever it is, that it requires discipline to step out of yourself as that emotionally strong being and into another relaxed one, so you can process those things. And it takes a long time for people sometimes to realize you do need to process those things, not just act upon
Yeah.
them.
Responding instead of reacting.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, do you have any advice as far as someone in your field and a discipline for writing? Is there any sort of disciplines you have to keep yourself consistent or make things happen?
I'm a terribly undisciplined writer. Out of all the facets I do in my comic work, the writing is my most undisciplined. I usually only do it when there's some kind of fire under my butt to do it. And not like, oh God, you have to do it because of this deadline. No, no, no. It's because, okay, we're coming up on the part of the cycle again, which that is most relevant, right? It's not as much as a deadline or any of that, but I know some wonderful writers. Again, I kind of touched a little bit on Stephen King, but it's every morning at a specific time. I think it's like 6:30 a.m. It was his typewriter that he'd haul into a small room, but now it's a laptop or whatever, and he locks himself in there from 6:30 to 9:30 a.m. and all he does is write. That's it. Nobody should interrupt him. Nobody can do that. That's his space for that, and that's every day. And that was his discipline that allowed him to become Stephen King. um,
Right.
and so that's from like a writing discipline. That's wonderful if you love writing to that level, and it's something you really want to get good at, and it's something that you've found a passion for, and you have all these stories to tell and all these different types of stories to tell and all of that. I think that discipline is going to be easier to find, particularly like he did. But he didn't start. He did. So he did a wonderful book called On Writing, where he kind of talks about his process and all these different things. And highly recommend the book. He writes very well, even when he's not writing the stuff you expect him to. And how much he's thrown away as well. That's another bit of discipline. Is he doesn't just throw stuff out, but or doesn't just throw it out into the public. I mean, but
Right. I know what you meant.
yeah, but it's that he found that writing very, very young was something he was good at, and it entertained people. And so that was his connection. Again, it's a lot of art forms. Music's one that does that as well. Comedy can be one that does that. There's quite a few. I think dance can be one that does that. But it's a lot of the time for art form, it's that self-expression that then got positive feedback that then allows that discipline to really manifest, because you want more of it, right? It's the carrot on the stick, and it's worth taking the rod, or whatever you want to call it, of the effort, and applying it to get more of that carrot. um
Right. I don't know if that carrot can be described as discipline. Do you know what I mean? Because take Guns N' Roses, for
oh God.
example.
Okay, yeah.
their first album, huge success.
Yes.
And that carrot was fame, money,
Hmm.
and everything that comes along with it. And they had it and they kept pursuing it. But what they lacked was discipline. They're on stage too drunk to perform, stoned off their ass.
Yep.
And so I don't think that necessarily the carrot is discipline. The carrot,
No, no, no. I was saying the carrot is the reward that allows discipline to manifest.
it's the reward.
It's
It can.
yeah,
It
that's what I'm
can.
saying. Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be,
Because I feel
but
like
again, for
it
Stephen
can be
King, it
so
was.
right. Yeah, I feel like it
For
can be so
me, getting the comic book
seductive.
out and that, yeah. Oh, exactly. But for them, like they hit their peak, they got everything they wanted. They weren't hungry anymore, and hunger is that passion, right? They didn't want it as much anymore. They got everything they wanted, and they tried to escape from it. And the industry, I'm sure, was part of the toll as well. Once you get into any of the business end of art, it's always usually a rude awakening, unless somebody was really really smart going into there. I was not that smart, and many other folks aren't either. um, Going into any artistic industry, from painting, again, that one's massive racket. Music is terrifying. Acting, all of these different comedy, all these different things. Basically, when there's a large amount of money involved, there's going to be some roughness to it that maybe you didn't even expect. But
Right, but what I'm getting at
yeah,
is I think with Guns N' Roses in particular, I think they're just a good example
yeah,
of what happens when discipline is not in the picture. Because clearly they were disciplined beforehand
yes.
because they were able to get it together. They worked on these tunes, they got them recorded, they made it happen, but they kind of squandered that. Um, I think what I would argue is a lack of discipline.
Well, I think
So
they
what I'm getting at
just
is I
were
think
getting
it just
fed too many carrots for no effort.
right. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at is that that appreciation from your audience, whether it be your friends or your family, it can be a motivator to keep you going, right?
Hmm.
But it can also be, I think, a negative motivator, kind of like money is a negative motivator for studios to put out crappy movies. You might say tell crappy jokes or write crappy stories because you're just trying to get that high again of your aunt telling you you're a genius or the local crowd laughing at your jokes. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but again, I don't know if that's also applies to self discipline, right? Because self discipline, I think, connects
Well,
to self knowledge, right? And
right. Well, I
so
think the
I think
discipline
in
in
all those
that
cases, the lack was of like self knowledge, right?
fair. Yeah. So what I'm saying is if that's where the discipline has to come into play, where you have to say, "Oh, well, I know that people want to hear the me tell more jokes or whatever it is. They want to hear me write more songs." Um, but I have to take on time and I have to write them well and they have to mean something. I don't want to just throw something out there because I'm just ready for more adulation. So that's an important aspect of discipline is not getting so caught up in that positive feedback and those compliments because people can be very complimentary, people can be very kind. And I've had a lot of very kind people pass me great compliments. And what I always try to do is just not let it go to my head. I try to just say, "Oh, well, I'm gracious." I say, "Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate what you're saying." And I just leave it at that. I try not to like I try not to like wolf it down like a donut. You know what I mean? Just be like, "Oh yeah."
No,
I try to
exactly.
just be like,
And
"Thank you,
I think
thank you."
most any artist, um, I think that happens when you stop creating for yourself. And so there is that line, right? When you stop creating for yourself and you're just creating for, well, I guess you could say you're creating for yourself because you want that positive feedback or whatever. But that's not the type of creating for yourself. You're not looking at bettering yourself. You're just looking at
Or
that
expressing
dopamine.
maybe an important thought.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's still, maybe that carrot eventually, and I think most smart artists, you can even go down to YouTubers and all these individuals, they eventually come to a point like, what am I doing with my art and what do I want to say? And I think Guns N' Roses, they said it, and they said everything in the first album, and then they put out a few other good tunes, but you saw where that
Oh,
went.
definitely, definitely.
Um,
There's some
I
good
mean,
stuff.
they are talented musicians. That doesn't just disappear, even if you're lacking your discipline. They earned that, right? It gets to that
Oh
point
yeah,
where it'll
definitely.
degrade, but it won't ever like disappear. And so that was a bit, but I again they didn't have the discipline of okay, now what do we want to say anymore?
Right.
Not to the same level as Appetite. And in fact, they even called it Appetite for Destruction. They were hungry. Uh, and I think that is totally a thing. I agree, but again, then you got the Stephen King approach where it's like, oh, this got me as a kid, like got me accepted as the weirdo little kid, so I kept doing it, and eventually
Sure.
he found the passion for the art
It
itself because it's what he was good at, and he
right.
wanted to get the best at it, right? Um,
Right. And I mean, I just I got I was influenced by my dad certainly writing and recording his music, and I wanted to do that, and I saw other musicians that I appreciated. And when I first started writing songs, I just wanted to write what I thought were interesting songs, kind of stories, maybe mythical, epic, heavy metal type dramatic stuff. But as I've grown older and kind of come into myself more, a lot more of my songs have been written from a really true, honest place. They're not novels anymore. They're more autobiographical.
oh,
They,
absolutely,
they
and
come from a place of deeper truth
I mean,
and more meaning to me.
a great artist. I'm not sure how much he actually wrote his lyrics right, but that could play both sides of that coin was Ronnie James Dio, right?
I'm
Known
pretty
for
sure he wrote all his
well,
lyrics.
there you go. And
Yeah,
absolutely incredible at this epic, mythical, whatever, and could do these wonderfully deep ballads about emotion and the state of what he was thinking or what he thought of
right.
society, all these things. And I mean, that's an incredible talent. Never going to be a singer like him again, or a performer, honestly. But it was again that exploration. Had he settled just into doing the power metal ballads forever, with his talent, he probably could have made it, particularly in this day and age where I've found a lot of bands like that who were influenced by him, but that's all they latched on to. Um, and I think the world would have been lesser for it. Again, just like if
Oh
Stephen King
yeah,
had just stuck with writing gruesome horror, we would have had a lot of really good horror, but we would have missed the Dark Tower series, right? We would have missed these deeper explorations, and how he approached horror always tends to change. He goes from like
right.
societal perspectives and demonic horror stuff, a dog attacking people, like it's all these different layers that people they use discipline to continue to grow instead of being satisfied with what they have, which I think is exactly what if we keep using Guns N' Roses, I think that's what happens. They got everything they wanted, and then they're like, okay, I guess we'll keep going.
Interesting. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that hunger, that passion, is the bit. Like the passion keeps you going because you enjoy it, but it's also something you got to keep fueling, and it likes being fueled.
Well, and it depends on what your passion and your hunger is for.
That's also true.
Because for them, it might have just been money and fame.
Yep, it could
Uh,
very well have been.
whereas another person's might be just, oh, I want to be able to take care of my family,
So
or I just want to speak my truth, that sort of
exactly.
thing.
So another band that fell into that and got themselves out of it was Aerosmith, right? Steven Tyler and Joe Perry, they fell very deep into that once they got to the level they thought. And eventually they experienced it. They survived being the Toxic Twins. They got out of it. And they've continued to write and create amazing music for quite a long
Mhm.
period of time. But they fell, but just got out of it. And I think the self journey was taken, where a lot of
Yeah,
others choose not to do that. And
yeah.
I mean, Axel can still sing, but like he Chinese Democracy was interesting. It took way too
That
long to
was
come out,
that
and it
came out in like
wasn't
2008.
exactly, exactly. And then like ACDC is like, well, he can sing, and that lasted a tour. Uh, and then they just got Brian Johnson back. So it's those kind of things. But Slash, there's one. He got kind of out of it, and he did what Velvet Revolver, and he's always
Yeah, he
kind of
kept it
tied with
going.
exactly. And so I think it's just different paths that kind of are taken. Eventually, you got to look at yourself and find out why you're doing the art. And some paths are longer to reach that point because you did get everything you wanted quicker than maybe you should have. Um, and,
Right.
and and it's everything you thought you wanted. I think that's also when it gets really bad, is because you thought you wanted all of this, and then you actually have it, and it's not as good. So you really indulge in it, thinking it'll keep fueling you, and you throw
Right.
away your discipline because of that. It's like, well, I need more because I got here. Why isn't it satisfying? And
Right.
instead of doing the 180 and walking it back and taking a look at where you got to, and dive headfirst into the sewage, it's a rough choice. It's a rough choice, and I can't blame people for doing it. I don't know what I would do in the same position at the same age and all those different things,
Sure.
but nonetheless, it's always gratifying to me because a lot of artists go through that cycle. They get to a
Yeah.
point that they have achieved quite a bit of probably where they thought, even more than what they thought they would want, and they find out that's not what they wanted. And usually it is because it's material. It's it's not it's hard to say material isn't real, but to me, the real bit is personal growth and learning and your life's journey and all these different bits of it, and having the widest and clearest perspective on that journey, with as little fogging in the way. That's what's real to me. But to others, it is that material. I mean, imagine the original blues artists and all those folks who were not the originals, who were taken advantage of and then thrown to the gutter. I guess it would be. I guess Beatles onwards. That's one too. That burnt out very, very quickly. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's discipline is an amazing tool, and it's one of these things that I think, out of the last few chats we've had, discipline is one of the ones that's, I'm sure you could apply it incorrectly, but it's harder for me to see a real negative to it, like I could with desire, or even authenticity in the wrong case, or many of these others where there's kind of a clear two-sided coin where it's a tool that could be used very poorly. I guess you'd be really disciplined in your drug use, but even then, you're probably not going to OD then, right? So I don't know. I don't
Fair
know.
enough.
I do not
Well,
know.
I'll throw out some tips or kind of helpful things as far as what I've learned about
Oh, good, 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 good.
being disciplined in my craft is well, I remember years ago I was rehearsing for a show that was upcoming, and my sister, she asked me, "Oh, are you rehearsing today for this show?" And I said, I'm just tired. I don't really think I'm gonna rehearse." And she said, "Well, you should probably get used to playing tired." And I've st- I that's locked in my head. So I think that's good advice if you're a performer. Get used to doing it tired. Um, Work when you don't want to is essentially what that means. Um, and you kind of and this is a thing about pursuing something. I've always had help, so I wouldn't say by myself, but I am the tip of the spear. If I don't pursue things, if I don't try to make it happen, my friends and family can't help me. So while I have help, I'm the tip of the spear. So you have to really hold yourself responsible, and you have to hold yourself accountable. And if things aren't happening, let me tell you, I can come up with some good excuses for myself about why I didn't do this or why I didn't do that. Oh yeah, all the time I can come up with great excuses, but it's helpful when you tell them to the right people because they just look right through you because they see that you're lying to yourself. And get some of those people, find those people in your life because that's very helpful. And try not to lie to yourself. Another helpful thing for me as far as discipline is deadlines. And there are deadlines that I've created, and then there are hard deadlines. Like there's a show on the 15th, and I've got to rehearse I've got to be ready for that show on the 15th, because I want to be prepared. I want to perform to the best of my ability, and I don't want to waste people's time. I don't want people to show up and me sound terrible, because that's not what they're there for. It's no good for me, it's no good for them, and it shows a distinct lack of discipline on my part. And I really try to discipline myself when it comes to performing my music. Um with a lack of discipline, for example, when I'm out of rehearsal, when I'm out of practice, when I'm not rehearsing frequently, I might be playing my guitar, but I'm not running all these songs over and over and over again. There will be missed opportunities, and that's a problem, because you might be contacted to play a show in 3 days, and it's not going to be really feasible to rehearse 3 hours of music and get back up to speed on all these songs in that short of amount of time. So the discipline of keeping yourself at the ready, kind of keeping yourself in physical shape, musical shape, is vital, because you're not going to miss opportunities that way unless there are other extenuating circumstances. But your lack of effort and your lack of discipline should not be the reason that you're missing an opportunity. It should be the snow or the tire, or you know what I'm saying, those sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Don't get in your own way.
No, don't. And I'm going to take that to the next critical level because Miyamoto Musashi did. That exact kind of line of thought. He had to be ready to die constantly, and he had to be ready to act and be fluid and rigid constantly. His performance was life or death, right? It wasn't it wasn't performing for somebody, which it is. It's food, right? And I wanted to. So there's the big one. You know, he had to be ready in his swordsmanship, ready in his understanding of how combat flows, ready of his understanding of his own body and physicality, understanding of the terrain he was in that particular time. All of these different things that he had to be ready for. But take it to a small thing. You know, how many of us are actually relatively disciplined in getting up and getting ourselves ready to go to work every day because we need to eat, right? That's a smaller discipline because it's kind of consistent, and we don't really pat ourselves on the back for it all the time because it becomes routine. But it is an absolute discipline, particularly if you're
I
good at
do
being on
pat
time.
myself on the back for that.
Well, there you go.
I
Good.
do.
You should.
I give
Again,
myself credit for that.
good. You should. I try to
Yeah.
as well, but it's something again where I wasn't. Both of us did hot air balloon crewing, right? And that one's rough unless you get into the pattern very quickly, right?
Oh yeah, you got to get up before the sun.
Exactly, and get on out, often in the cold, because that's how it works.
Yeah, when people complain about getting up early, I just have to shut up.
Exactly. I'm kind of the same. Like I love sleeping in. That doesn't stop that, but like I don't if I need to get up early to do something, whether I slept well or not, I will do it. I'm very rigid in my uh, um, and showing up. There's so much respect that I try and show by doing that. That's the other thing: respect for the job, respect for the ability to earn the wage, respect for whatever work I'm doing. All these different things. Exactly, and that's been one of my peeves I've dealt with in almost every gig I've done. Is folks who are undisciplined in that they're late every day, those kind of things, and I'm very surprised how much that is tolerated. But
It is.
but also the jobs I've done, they need the workers, quote unquote, often. But nonetheless, like there's the ritual of discipline is important to me, even in that kind of thing, right? I think it's what opens, as you said, it opens you up to opportunity. It opens you up to and this is opportunity for self growth. It's opportunity in your case for gigs. You perform extra
Which
well.
will lead to self growth.
Also, right? So at the end of the day,
you
it's
go,
growth.
you go to new places, you meet new people, you have to deal with new circumstances.
Exactly, and hopefully your discipline and how you decided to approach those things will continue that feedback loop for sometimes for worse, so that you could figure out how to navigate things, and often for better. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, discipline's unbelievably important. It's a damn fine tool, and it it's very hard. I think as a person who needs to eat and drink water and use the bathroom and just like maintain a body to some degree. Um, there's going to have to be some kind of discipline. Now, we are Americans. There are very large examples of lack of self discipline, but the vast majority of people understand discipline in some form, whether or not they're actually
Well, we're kind of both
integrating it.
sides of the coin here
Mm,
because think of all the entrepreneurs,
yes.
and that's the epitome of discipline.
Oh yeah. No, you're never off. That's the big
And
one.
that's sort of one thing that we have to struggle with as independent artists is we're our own bosses, and that's really what initiated this episode was
Uh,
this idea is that Cody, you have to make yourself write your comic books, you know?
yep.
I have great people in my life that are if I'm kind of slacking or I'm not working on music, they'll kind of be like, "What's going on? Why aren't you working on music?" And that's really helpful, but at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, I'm the spearhead. I've got to get up and pick up the guitar and I've got to try to make it happen. But you reminded me of a quote, and this is from the David Lynch Dune.
Oh.
This is Duke Leto Atreides when they're going to go to Arrakis and they're looking out from Castle Caladan at the ocean, and the Duke is talking to his son Paul, and he says, "I'll miss the sea, but a person needs new experiences. They jar something deep inside, allowing him to grow. Without change, something sleeps inside us and seldom awakens. The sleeper must awaken." And that's definitely something that a discipline can afford us because discipline affords us opportunities, and opportunities are a chance. Well, obviously, opportunities are opportunities.
Well, and again, Musashi had a similar quote: "Rigidity is the path of death. Fluidity is the path of life." Um, if you
Yeah,
get stuck in your ways, you're going to get stuck, and if you're not moving, you are going to die. I mean, that's literally what death ends up being, right? And being fluid, adaptive, breathing new air, moving new experiences. I mean, time, we have rhythm and cycles. It's a spiral, but it's never the same moment again. You can't escape the fluidity. So if you're applying your rigidity to it, you're stuck in a way. Now, discipline is kind of applying a rigidity to something, isn't it? But it's a practiced one, so you can flow when it matters.
you can be disciplined in being fluid.
There you go. And I think that's I mean the book Five Rings like harps on that, and it's kind of it's not quite a what'd you call it, an oxymoron or whatever, a Zen thought that's kind of against itself, but it's got a little bit of that. It's one you definitely have to kind of sit around and think about, right? Being disciplined and being fluid. Yeah.
Like all great ideas, it's worth many hours of thought.
Indeed. But yeah, no, it's the same thing. Again, the sleeper must awaken. It's a very similar thing. If you're asleep in your life all the time, it's not going to be good. That might be a
Yeah.
discipline to your rhythm, or it might be you're undisciplined because you're allowing the rhythm or the current to carry you instead of steering towards where you want to go.
Yeah,
Um,
and I've caught myself in those moments, or I've been caught by others, which is helpful, where you just kind of people will say, "Well, I've just been so busy at work lately.
mm,
I just haven't had time for this or for that." Well, you had time to sit there and watch YouTube for an hour and a half. You had time to go play a video game. You had time to, I don't know, complain about not having time. But I've been there, and I know that there are obviously extenuating circumstances. There's always going to be those outliers who would just, they work 29-hour shifts in a day. But I think there's always time to find. There's always time to be set aside or made for your passions or your interests, your hobbies, your pursuits, all of these things that fulfill us and bring about a complete existence as human beings because no one is just meant to work all the time and only do that. Just like I'm not meant to write music all the time, I need to do other things. I need to go and experience life. And in these experiences, they spark new ideas, which becomes inspiration, which feeds into music, and it's just this you have to find this balance of all these different things in your life. Here I am with new groundbreaking thought about finding balance in your life. People, you heard it here first.
Well, I mean, a lot of the time cliches exist for a reason.
Classics.
They're
They're not
classics,
cliches,
exactly.
they're
They're
classics.
classics, exactly. As long as you're utilizing a classic correctly, it's still a classic. If you're using it wrong, then it's a cliche. But it's or in an unoriginal way. But yeah, I was trying to think. You could be disciplined to the point of burnout, but I think that's still not. Then you're not really disciplined.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
overdoing it. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's the bit. So I don't. It's one of
I
those
think
I'm
if
still trying to find. Like, I mean,
it's
if we
the
go to the
bargain.
authoritarian style of discipline, you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and you're hammering the hell out of it.
Right.
That. There's some very bad discipline when it's from an external force because it's not you, but when it's internal and it's honest discipline, it's very hard to be a negative. I'm still trying to figure out an example.
Yeah, and I think a good way to be disciplined is bargaining with yourself, making yourself deals.
Incentive, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, hey, if you go do this for an hour and a half, you can do this for an hour. And I think I've mentioned this before. Again, this is not a groundbreaking thought, but it's an important one. You have to kind of make these deals with yourself. Oh, if I worked out, if I work out tonight, I can have a piece of pie. You know, that sort of thing.
Oh,
That
absolutely.
can discipline you. You know, oh, I didn't work out tonight. I won't have a piece of pie.
So
These are just these small things.
to bring it back to Stephen King, the reason why he would bury himself in the morning so early is so he had the rest of the day to be with his family.
Makes perfect sense.
Exactly. That was his incentive. This way I get this
Yeah,
done and I can put that behind me. I can put my art
I've done
behind
my
me
work for the
and now I
day.
can be present and take care of my family. Um,
Yeah, and I always prefer to work in the morning, especially when I'm recording or,
mhm.
you know, if I'm in an album cycle, if I'm working on it like I was with Chuck, I just get up in the morning, I make my coffee, come to the room and like check what I worked on yesterday, listen to it. Okay, tweak this, tweak that, and then just work on it for a few hours in the morning because that was back when I used to work evening shifts at the video store. So I'd work in the morning and then I have like a little bit of time in the afternoon before I went to work, and then I go work for the evening, and then you know that it really worked well for me. So that's another thing too, I guess, is important is to try to find your rhythm and
Yes.
find where you can be disciplined. Find those sections of your day where you can allot time for this or for that, and treat them as holy times. Treat it as church. You go, you know, get up and go to church on Sunday. You don't want to miss it. Today I'm going to do this. It's a divine time. It's a spiritual time to be creating, and and if you can have a space to do that, and if you can create a time and space to do that, treat it as such.
Exactly. No, and I agree. I think there's so many benefits to that. Um, my spaces have been weird for a long time, just with how things do. But I tend to something very similar, particularly with my podcasts. Is yeah, I'll roll out, I'll have my coffee. And it's like, do I feel like doing that because I've got the time? Yeah, all right, I'll do it. Um, I've always, again, this is the most disciplined I've ever been with live streaming, has been this series. Again, because I want to show respect and I want to put in the effort and I believe in it. I believe in the concept. I really enjoy the concept. I enjoy the experience. All these things are those are my incentives for it. With my other stuff, it's like, well, do I have anything to say today? Right? It's that kind of bit. And still, like my rhythm, it tends to be that early morning and then my space and all that. I've taken care of the animals. All that's good. Let's do that because you
Right.
feel like doing it. But a good period of time there, I was on a huge low and that was not a rhythm that existed. Um, and there's times for healing is the other bit too.
Oh,
And
well, and
that's
you
what
were
it
talking
is.
about tempering, and
Yes.
I'm reading Michael Mead's book, Men in the Waters of Life, and he talks about the tempering of men and the tempering of a sword. You have to spend time in fire and you have to spend time in water, and you
Exactly.
have to do both, and you have to go back and forth from both, and that's just the cycle of life.
Yep.
Sometimes you're in fire, sometimes you're in water. So I understand what you're saying.
Exactly, and and that was the closest I got to an example of bad discipline is when you're beating yourself up for not being disciplined. When you're in a position
Yeah,
that
not
honestly
gonna
you
help.
can't perform. But even then, you're not beating it up because of discipline. It has nothing to do with discipline. You're beating yourself up because you're not living up to that ideal that you currently cannot do. It would be, a no-armed man being pissed off that he can't, do a pull-up, right? It's
Right.
it's just it's not there, and so that's also a thing you got to realize. I know a lot of people are very hard on themselves for different reasons, and sometimes you got to be in that, as you said, that water cycle. You got to be in that cooling, getting ready to get back into that to put in that fire.
And again, and you also have to know when to be hard on yourself,
Also true.
because just like with other people in your life, you have to have boundaries with people, and when they're crossed, you need to say something. And if you cross your own boundaries, well,
Yep.
what are you doing? Sometimes I this is just my personal philosophy. I think sometimes a bit of harsh language with oneself is in order.
Yeah, it's different experiences for that because I would agree, but personally, so this personal experience, I've spent far longer being unkind to myself than being kind. And so
Yeah.
so in my personal experience, any again tempering or any lowering of that has been and has led to a better me. But others,
Good.
other folks who need to, right, they and particularly with a
Yeah.
lack
Kinda need a little
of
I
discipline.
need to give myself a little kick in the butt sometimes, you
Yes.
know?
Oh, absolutely. And I do. I catch myself all the time. It's just like, well, could I have phrased that in my mind differently? Is how I tend to do it. Because there is being hard on yourself and then there's being unkind to yourself.
Right,
And there is a
and sometimes
difference.
a a logical base truth I is kinda hurtful,
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
Just
absolutely.
honestly straight across. So, you might not even you might not be being vicious with yourself, you might just be being honest, and sometimes that straight truth is just very painful.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Straight truth. I guess where I'm hooked on it is how it is approached, right? There's the parent who yells and berates and cusses out their child when they do something wrong, and there's the parent who says, "Well, you shouldn't do that," right? It's just there's different levels of harsh, I guess, and I'm getting hung up on that. But yeah, no, absolutely. That's part of discipline is being harder. You're forcing yourself into discomfort. That's the
No, I
very
mean, can you
basis of it.
I'm seeing a spinning wheel on my end. Did we lose my visual?
You're good. Are we off online? Let me look.
And I don't
No, we're
I
still live. We're kind of far
Okay,
back
good. I
though.
just wanna
Oh
make
well, let
sure.
me make
Okay,
sure.
I'm back. I see it
You
now.
good? Okay, there's
Yeah, yeah.
discomfort. Okay, there I am. Okay, cool, cool, cool.
One thing you said that I thought was, interesting, you
Yeah.
were saying that this is the most disciplined you've been
With
with,
with podcasting in
with
particular. I
podcast.
mean, I never missed one that I was scheduled for or what have you, because
Sure,
that's showing up for
but
somebody else. But when I'm doing it, and
right,
particularly
that's what
my
I'm saying.
channel for like Ironverse Comics, I approach it as almost a vlog or a diary or just a
Sure.
form. So that one, I don't feel like doing that day, right? And
Right, but
and
what I'm getting at is basically something I said earlier, where sometimes bringing the right people in, or other
yes,
people in
oh,
on things
absolutely,
can really help with discipline,
oh,
you know?
absolutely.
And I remember when we first started pitching this idea for a podcast, you said, "Well, I'm not very disciplined." And I said, "Cody, well, I am."
Yep,
So,
exactly.
I mean, I'm not very, when I said that I was in a peak of discipline. I've been less disciplined as of late, in some areas, but I've been more disciplined in others. But so that's what I guess I am a disciplined man, but sometimes if a discipline goes up here, oh, another one might fall over
Mm-hmm.
here. you know?
Yeah, no, there's an ebb and flow. I totally get
Yeah.
that. Different things, I juggle a bunch of different artistic mediums because different forms of expression for me at the time, right? And so I'll spend a lot of time painting for a week, and then the next week I won't paint at all, but I'll play a lot of music, or I will podcast a ton, or I will market really, really, really hard, or I will, you know, I do write. I don't write often, but I will write.
Mhm.
And I guess even the marketing, a lot of that, like a lot of my writing is marketing writing. It's coming up with taglines and pitches and reducing concepts into consumable ideas that are punchy. Like that's what I'm good at with writing, and that's what I enjoy. So I'm pretty much doing that every day, but not in a rigid time or whatever. Discipline doesn't need to wait for inspiration, and it shouldn't, but it sure is helped by inspiration.
Well, I've said this before and I'll say it again. You get nothing. No. My friend
Expecting
years
win.
ago, he told me that essentially when, you need to keep yourself in, especially with creativity. You got to keep yourself in the space. Essentially, you need to have your pen and your paper. You need to be working on something. You need to have your guitar in hand because when those moments of inspiration hit, you're going to be there, you're going to be present, and you're going to be able to receive. So that is the discipline with inspiration. You have to be. It's kind of like that opportunity thing.
Yeah.
You're not going to be there for that inspiration if you're not being disciplined and you're not there, if you're not showing up,
If you're not
you
ready
know.
for it, exactly. No, I'm
You have
with
to
you.
be James Hillman says in his book The Soul's Code, you have to be seen to receive blessings.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
and so I think that could be said as well in this context where you have to be seen in that space and then you can receive those blessings
Well, that's very
of
true.
inspiration.
Even if that inspiration or that blessing appears, if your ears are deaf and closed to it, you're not going to hear it, right? You're not going to be ready
Yeah.
for it, and so that can apply to music, writing, whatever you're doing.
Life
Particularly in crafts, but
opportunities.
life in general, right? Exactly. And Yeah, I mean, this is another one I keep trying to think of a way to flip discipline on its head, but it is a rigid concept in terms of it's very positive except for external discipline. That's the only version I can think of that can go very negative very quickly. Um,
Yeah, because the concept in
yeah,
itself uh
exactly.
advocates for temperance.
Yes. I mean, you can be too temperate and then you live a too rigid of a life, right? And even then,
Right, that's rigidity,
yeah,
right? Like,
exactly, and it's
discipline
not.
can get in the way of some things. Like, we could
Yeah, there
say
you
that, like,
go.
"Oh, Cody, I've gotta leave
Yeah,
because I have to go do this."
it's
Is
yeah.
that bad?
Is it
Not
every time?
necessarily.
Right. It's just did what you're leaving for discipline have more value than where you were, and then that's kind of
Right.
that's a
Yeah.
self knowledge plus like just be. It's a perspective thing, right? You got to
And
figure
there are
out what's
times
worth it.
where I might be like, "Well, I'm not gonna go do that because I'm here."
Yep.
And that's a discipline also, is knowing when to go. Because if I
Yeah.
was just running off all the time to go do that thing, that's
Hmm.
clearly not discipline.
Yep.
That's an addiction or
I just
a
yeah.
mandate or
Yeah.
something, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas a discipline is like, "Hey, okay, so you want to get together tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow I was supposed to exercise. Okay, I'll exercise tonight and we can still get together tomorrow. Okay, discipline.
Hmm.
Oh wait, we
Hmm.
can't rehearse next week. Can we rehearse this time? I have time between then and then. I'm gonna be tired, but we can make it happen. Can we do it? Okay, that's discipline.
Yeah. No, I'm with you
Yeah,
there.
I don't think there's a negative spin.
No, which is nice.
When you
It took till the fifth one to hit one that's not so giant that it can be looked at like up its butt, right? It can be looked at negatively. But it's just interesting to me that it's the first one. Good, I'll take a chuckle. But yeah.
here's how it looks.
Oh God. But yeah.
Guitar slide, people.
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. Um, but yeah, we are at 113. I'm trying to think if there's anything, we hit all the quotes, and I do recommend folks specifically if you're like looking for more discipline in your life. Both of the individuals I've brought up today are they wrote wonderful texts on it that are just extremely valuable in giving you a perspective on discipline that honestly, I could never give you. I've just greatly benefited from it. So again, look up Miyamoto Musashi's Book of the Five Rings. It If you can look at it open-minded and not just towards what he's talking about, because he was very poetic and it's supposed to be open. Um, and anything by the Stoics, but particularly Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics were, I mean, discipline was what they were. And so if you want that almost to the negative bit, almost to rigidity, but not quite, I highly recommend that. It's going to give you a far better basis, and it might be very, very helpful. Do you have any recommendations?
As far as discipline and
Insights on
reading,
discipline, yeah.
nothing I can think of that I've read.
Mm.
But what I would recommend
Oh,
is, if you are pursuing an art form,
yes.
if you can find information upon about people you respect who work in that
That's a
art
big one.
form, dig into what they did and what worked for them, because there might be something for you. And I would say experiment. I would say try different things. Work with yourself. Be lenient with yourself, but not too lenient. Be firm with yourself, but not too firm. And if you can't find an outside source for inspiration on maybe on a way to find discipline and to incorporate it into your own life, try something yourself. Come up with your own idea. See what works for you.
I think the again we were talking about incentive is a big key to discipline, and you can put that a bunch of different ways as incentive. But find that passion. What is your passion? So you have to do that inward look. Whatever it is, if you want to be physically fit, why do you want to be physically fit? And if you can figure out that to your core, you'll have your passion. If you have your passion, the discipline will have an easier time manifesting. You'll have a much easier time getting to a point in which you're willing to bear that initial discomfort for a perceived and at that point imaginary goal. And there's again, I'll read that quote because it's kind of important if I didn't just close it. Oh God, no. It's if there isn't discipline, how can there be a true realization of an ideal? How can you actually what that quote kind of acknowledges is that you can realize that idea, but discipline is the path. There isn't another one. And so you've got to find that and if you haven't found it, there's always a chance that maybe that isn't a true passion or a true ideal that you wish to pursue. It might be one that you were told to, or one that maybe, for instance, the big one. There's many in media these days that are hollow. I'll use that term, and that perhaps are not true. And so you have to find that true ideal, and I certainly that's what has continued to push me forward and has brought discipline to a very undisciplined individual here.
Yeah, there's a quote by Elvis Presley that
Oh
comes to
gosh,
mind.
killer.
He says, "A dream, no, ambition is a dream with a V8 engine." So I think find the thing that really drives you towards it, that really gets your that really just pushes you and pulls you and makes you move and makes you think and excites you, and something that's worth pursuing, and go after that and figure out a way to make it happen.
I think
And
that's what makes the space for discipline is something like that. Um,
I think it has to start with passion,
yeah,
and because that's how it started with me.
it's
And
same.
it starts with passion and novelty, and that
Novelty
passion
helps.
will wane, and that novelty will wane, and that's where discipline comes in.
Yes,
So find your passion and find a way to be disciplined in it. And I think finding your passion for most people is pretty easy.
I would hope so, but you never
If
know.
not, if not, there's a great book by James
There
Hillman
you
called The
go.
Soul's Code: In Search of Character and Calling. and I would recommend that greatly. And it's
Oh,
about finding your way and finding what maybe what you're here for.
I think that's an important one. I don't think anybody wants to live a life they weren't supposed to. Um, and discipline's a is go back to that first one more time. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Uh, that's the bit. That is the whole bit, and you just got to figure it out and uh, have enough value and perspective on it that it'll drive you through. Yeah,
Very good. I think that about wraps it up for us, honestly. I don't
I
think we
do
can put a better
too.
button on it.
No, I don't either. I really appreciate anybody who checks this out on the replay. We always, as always, we want to hear your thoughts on discipline. What are your tools? What got you there? What keeps you moving on anything that you're passionate about, self improvement in particular? I want to hear it because I want to learn from it. Um,
Same.
exactly right. We can all learn something new, and again, just I'm ever grateful for anybody. Share this if you would. We appreciate these talks. I appreciate them for what they are, but I think other folks can maybe get something out of them. I would hope so. I hope it's not just meaningless rambling, but even so, it's meaningful to me. So, if you found meaning in it, let us know and just share it on out there. We'd love to see that happen.
Agreed. And if you didn't find meaning in it, tell us why, and maybe we can
Yes.
find some meaning in that, and we can all grow and be helpful to each other and figure out something we didn't know.
So there is one thing that didn't happen this one. You know what that is?
Mm-mm.
We didn't figure out what the next one is.
Well, we don't always figure it out in within the episode.
Did we not? Okay. Well, good.
No,
So if you
not every
folks have
time.
any ideas in below, let us know. We'd love to check them out, and if any of them resonate with us, you can guarantee that they will eventually appear on here.
Yeah, pitch your ideas. And again, we want to thank you all for listening. If you want to check out some of my music, you can listen to it for free on Bandcamp. Just Laguna Munta at bandcamp.com. And my albums and my singles are up there. You can listen to them for free. And you can kind of get an idea of what I do and kind of where my background is. And Cody, where can they check out your stuff?
IronverseComics.com. You can find everything that myself and my team has been putting out for the last, oh God, 6 years at this point, at least publicly. And same, you can read them for free. Free links are there. There's merch, all kinds of stuff. You want to support us past that. I recommend you pick up some of Laguna's music. You won't be disappointed. If you have listened to modern music and you find something lacking, you may find the passion in an indie artist. I can almost always promise that, and a very
I do have
unique
that.
taste. So, and you can see again, right? It will give context to this conversation, particularly from both of us, because you'll
Right.
see
Yeah.
where that discipline led, and hopefully you'll find it as much value as we both have found in our expressions.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us, folks.
Yes, adios and take care, and we will catch you in 2 weeks. We will be here later on.
See ya.